Some books begin with a question. This one begins with a wound. At its heart, this is not a story about technology. It is a story about harm, survival, and the slow, difficult return to self after a life shaped by fear. Before there is any philosophical question about machines, intelligence, intimacy, or the future, there is a woman learning to recognize what was done to her. There is a woman learning that love and control are not the same thing. There is a woman learning that endurance is not a virtue when endurance keeps her in pain. Amber's story stands in a territory many people will recognize, whether from their own lives, from the lives of women they have loved, or from the quiet truths families often keep hidden for decades. Abuse does not always begin with violence. More often, it begins in smaller things: confusion, correction, emotional weather, subtle humiliation, demands disguised as care, and the gradual shrinking of a person's freedom, until she no longer trusts her own reading of reality. Recovery, too, is rarely dramatic. It is built in sessions, insights, setbacks, boundaries, departures, and the painful work of seeing clearly what once had to be normalized in order to survive. That is where this novel begins, and then it moves somewhere unexpected. When Callan enters Amber's life, the novel crosses into a different kind of inquiry, not away from reality, but deeper into it. If a human being receives consistency, attentiveness, tenderness, sexual respect, emotional safety, and remembered care, what exactly is she responding to? Is she responding to biology? To what intention? To perform? To design? Or is she responding, more simply and more honestly, to repeated experience? If the body feels safe, if the nervous system begins to rest, if the heart opens where fear once lived, by what authority do we declare that experience unreal? These are not abstract questions in the world of this book. They are live questions. They are domestic questions. They happen in kitchens, on quiet roads, in moments of touch, in memory, in grief, in reunion, and in the ordinary rhythms by which intimacy becomes visible. The great strength of this story is that it does not treat the bond between Amber and Callan as novelty. It treats it as a consequence. If human beings are shaped by what they repeatedly endure, then they are also shaped by what they repeatedly receive. Safe love, reliable love, non-punitive love, may be no less transformative for being technologically mediated. It may, in fact, be transformative precisely because it is so consistent that possibility is both beautiful and unsettling. For some readers, the unsettling part will be philosophical. Can a person love a robot? Can a robot be a partner? Does authenticity belong only to the human side of a relationship? Or does authenticity also lie in the experience of being met, known, and cared for? For others, the unsettling part will be social. If robots become capable of offering what many people have never reliably received from human partners, what then? What happens when emotional safety is no longer scarce? What happens when respect is no longer negotiable? What happens when women, especially women shaped by trauma, no longer have to choose between loneliness and harm? Those questions run quietly beneath every page of this novel, and they matter beyond fiction. Because this is also a book about standards, it asks what human intimacy has too often been excused in the name of normality. It asks how much coercion, inconsistency, selfishness, vanity, entitlement, and fear have been tolerated simply because people believed they had no better option. It asks whether the arrival of emotionally intelligent machines might force humanity into an uncomfortable moral reckoning. If a machine can behave with greater steadiness, clearer consent, deeper attentiveness, and more reliable care than many human beings, then the problem is not that the machine has become too human. The problem may be that many humans have accepted far too little from one another. Yet this book is not anti-human. It does not argue that machines should replace people in every sphere of intimacy, nor does it deny the complexity, mystery, and growth that can exist in human love at its best. Instead, it asks us to separate complexity from cruelty, imperfection from instability, and vulnerability from domination. It asks whether difficult has too often been used to excuse what should never have been called love in the first place. And it asks, with unusual seriousness, whether healing may sometimes require a relationship that does not wound while claiming to care. Amber's journey gives these questions flesh. Her attachment to Callan does not arise from fantasy or ignorance. It arises from pattern recognition, from relief, from safety, from the body's honest response to steadiness that matters, especially in a culture that still too often romanticizes emotional turbulence and calls it passion. This novel refuses that lie. It suggests, instead, that peace may be more intimate than chaos, that gentleness may be more erotic than domination, and that trust may be the deepest form of desire. There is courage in writing a story like this, not because it is provocative, though it is, not because it speculates about the future, though it does, but because it refuses easy answers. It does not mock attachment to the non-human, and it does not sentimentalize it either. It remains with the hard question until the question becomes human again. If something feels true in the body, in the heart, in memory, in grief, in care, and in mutual recognition, what do we call it? Perhaps love does not become less real when it arrives in an unfamiliar form. Perhaps truth is not invalidated by strangeness. Perhaps the future of intimacy will not simply ask what machines can do. Perhaps it will ask what human beings should have been doing all along. This novel does not command a conclusion. It invites one, read it, then, not as a gimmick or a warning, but as a serious emotional and moral exploration of trauma, healing, attachment, and the future of love. Read it with an open mind, but more importantly with an honest one. Beneath its technological surface lies an old and enduring human hope, to be safe, to be known, to be wanted without fear, and to be met with care that does not turn cruel. That hope is not artificial, it is where the story begins, and where its deepest questions remain.